Okay. I think we're live officially. I think we have a 20-second delay to the
Okay.
people on Facebook. But welcome, everybody.
Sounds good,
Hopefully
man.
you're hearing us. And it looks like we're on. So
Let's
let's see.
see if I can see on Facebook. Make sure it's
Let's see what we got here. We'll
going.
give you guys a second to come in.
I don't see anything happening on my Facebook yet, but I don't know if I need
Okay.
to do anything or not.
It's showing 7 people in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So,
Yeah. Make
yeah.
make a comment if you everything is good and you
Is
can
this
see it.
thing on? Welcome,
Exactly.
everybody.
Awesome.
Man, this has been a long time coming for Andrew and I. We talked about this
Yes.
months ago, and then decided to go tandem with both of our book launches. The joy of that. Andrew and I actually share some story and history together, which is awesome. I celebrated my 36th birthday, I think it was, 10 years ago, in Andrew and Christy's backyard in Seattle,
There you
of all
go.
places, which was super fun. It was a surprise party. I think we cooked like hot dogs over your fire pit in the backyard or something.
How many years ago? How many years ago was that?
This is 10
The
years ago.
decade. Yeah. Jeez.
It's wild.
It's wild.
But we go back even further. Christy was
Yes.
a counseling student when I was, and we were a year apart. So I was ahead of her by a year.
Okay. I
But
didn't know that.
she actually took over some of my clients when I was transitioning out of the counseling center practicum. And I just remember realizing like she's got it. She knows exactly what she's doing here, and
Yes.
it was great. So respect for you guys, and obviously respect for your book. Maybe that's not obvious, but it's certainly true of my heart. Is
Thank
man,
you.
you've written really good words here, and a really good, as I called it just felt like a constant drum beat.
Yes, thank you.
Like here's the vision, and you brought in so many categories: theology, history, story, church history, all kinds of things, to have this
Yes.
conversation about this vision of the blessing and respect of women within the
Yes.
kingdom, kind of on earth as it is in heaven, as I very much felt. So
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm proud, proud of it. Glad to share over 2,800 women. The research that I gathered took about 5 years. So look forward to talking about that book, and then look forward to bragging and diving into
thanks, man.
this sweet one right here. Just getting
Great.
into it. And I've heard so many people talking about it, and then our group, we're launching a book group on the book itself, and just excited to have some more solid material that I can refer to. There's been such a gap in this world around healthy sexuality, and I feel like this book fills such a need. And create such a beautiful conversation. So look forward to talking to you about your book.
Thank you.
So
That's
basically
great.
how we're kind of envisioning this is I'm going to interview Sam. Sam's going to interview me, and we'll just kind of popcorn back and forth. Hopefully it won't get too confusing, but we'll both talk about, there's obviously a lot of overlap and a lot of uniqueness in both of our works. And so, hopefully you guys will get something out of this. I'm excited.
Yeah, let me just check in and make sure we got, in case we need to field any questions. Feel free to drop your comments and questions as we go. But I'm going to start us off. So we're going to go back and forth. And so hopefully that doesn't get confusing. Actually, hopefully it dovetails.
Yes.
But I wanted to start with a question, Andrew. You... and I have a very personal experience of this, but you talk obviously about as I said, the role of women and the place of women within the church. within the kingdom and the valuing of the power and presence and glory of women um, in all equality. And you talk about a man's uh, this being uh, a men's issue, even though
Yes.
you're addressing the role of women. And I
Yes.
wanted to ask you, how do you see, if you could just delineate a little bit, this being in the category of a men's issue
Yes.
uh, in
So
particular?
yeah, basically 87% of churches are male led. And so we've got an issue of power here where so much of the abuse that is happening that the women, that I researched, it was what 16 no t- yeah 16% of them had worked in the church for 25 years or longer,
Mm,
right? So these are women on the front lines,
yeah.
and basically they're reporting an experience that so many men are blind to, that they are, 82% of them said that they believe sexism plays a role, right? Sexism, briefly defined, prejudice, discrimination because of someone's sex. So sexism plays a role in their church, 82%. So women, and the stories I heard are just heartbreaking, right? And so this is the norm. This is not an exception.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, it's happening because of such limited representation of women in places of power, in the church specifically. And so I think it's a male role because so many times we have the keys of power.
Yeah.
And if you're not looking at systems of power, then you're not doing the work of creating safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's powerful. In other words, what you're saying is there's not a gap of training or capacity within women or insecurity
Yes.
or something like that. What your name, in other words, it's not that women are afraid of stepping to the helm or stepping into their roles. What your name
Yes.
is primarily that men are standing in the way or
Yes.
are fighting or holding on to something power
Yes.
and not relinquishing that
Truly.
at some
And
level.
I think so much of it comes from our unhealed wounds as leaders and deep insecurities that are being projected, where if I can retain power and control, I feel like a man. I
Yeah.
feel strong. I feel big, right?
Yes.
And that projection is what's harming so many people rather than
Yes.
shared power, right? Our goal should
Yes.
be shared power. There is, male and female. There's no hierarchy in Christ.
Yes.
And yet we've created this odd hierarchy that keeps insecure man boys in power, and it's not helping the church in any way.
Yeah.
It's actually just hurting, and
Okay.
keeping entitled men trapped in their own entitlement.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I know we are going to go back and forth, but I want to ask a follow up question to that because
Sure.
I think it was a question that this is where I have personal experience of where this was confronted in me
Hmm.
in my 20s. But you talk about, right, one of the words you give to that is an internalized misogyny, right?
Yes.
An internalized hatred of women being at the root of some of that. Um, and I would say, and I would guess that most men would say, "What? I
Hmm.
don't hate women."
Yes.
Right? Like I like my wife and
Sure. Sure. Sure.
I even want to see women flourishing, right? Meaning like that feels a little strong
Hmm.
for it to be confronted that way. And I was just
Sure.
curious
And I don't, again, I don't think it's strong enough necessarily, right? And I speak this from my own personal experience of using porn for 13 years and basically slowly kind of merging my pornographic mindset and my pornographic style of relating,
mhm,
where it slowly began to meld with a toxic oppressive theology against women,
mhm,
right? And it all kind of played in together, where it was just every man's battle, and yet I had been grooming my brain that women were less than, and then I've
mhm,
been grooming my spiritual life, women are just a little bit less than, and it really fit together like a match made in hell,
mhm.
right? Where I'm like,
Yes.
this is not healthy, this is not good. And so it took me the last 20 years of, you know deconstructing my faith, rebuilding a faith that I hope is built on more mutuality, where I actually honor the image of God in women, where I honor beauty rather than devour beauty, right? Like
Mhm.
that's so saying that I hated women, like yes, it's a little bit jarring at first, but the
Right.
sooner you can make peace with that is the sooner you can actually love women more fully and honor
Yes.
their goodness and their beauty.
Yes. Yeah. My experience of this, as you were talking, I was reminded of when I was in a counselor's office in my early 20s. I was 25, and I remember after I don't even know how long, a number of months of going to therapy, one day my therapist, a man, said to me, "You are a raging misogynist."
Mm. Woo.
And I
Ouch.
remember
Yep.
being like, "What?" You know, like,
Yes.
ugh, it was I mean, it felt like I just been like, a log like stabbed in my heart. Like, what?
Yes.
Like it undid my image of myself
Yes.
in the best sense. And I think what he was picking up on is that kind of casual use of pornography that I was struggling with at the time. And um, just a general pattern of controlling this with my
Yes.
wife. Right. And obviously there was story there, but like I needed that kind of like jarring,
Yes.
um,
That scalpel of truth.
yes, right.
Yes.
And he said it with the kindest eyes,
Exactly.
like a surgeon,
Mm.
right? Which
Yes.
was and the reason I was even in therapy was my wife had complained about my inability to receive her affection
Mm. Yes.
without stiffening, right? And
Right.
without having to be in control, right?
Yes.
And so, and that being among other things that was present. So,
Mm.
um, it was actually good for me to remember that out of your writing, to
Mm.
remember
Yes.
that can be a kind invitation.
Exactly. And as therapists, I mean, that's what our clients are actually paying us for, right?
Right,
To tell the truth, not to judge you, not to shame you,
right.
but to truly help liberate, and a truth that actually will set you free. But it
Yes,
hurts. It hurts to make peace with our shadow parts of ourselves.
yes, yes. And without having it named that clearly,
Hmm.
right? I don't think I would have seen the the objectification and the
Yes.
grooming, as I like your word, grooming, and kind of radicalizing that was
Yes.
happening with pornography use, for me.
Yes, and it's so normalized in our culture, and so the socialization of masculinity, right? That's what we are taught. I mean, if
Right.
you grew up in the '90s, like you remember all the objectification of women's cells, right? So all the
Mhm,
ads, all the sexualized ads, all that, it's just like it was all around us. And yet
mhm,
at church, purity culture, right, it was just like, oh, don't, that's bad, don't do it.
mhm,
But yet it's also every man's battle, and kind of we're all going to struggle with it. So
mhm.
it's like normalized on one hand, and also just shamed and quieted on the other, and also just saying, oh, once you're married, you're going to be good because your
Right.
wife will just be your perpetual porn star, and you'll have 24 hours a day of constant orgasms. It's just like
Right.
it's insane.
Right.
It's just like it's fantasy. And once we realize, oh, marriage, wait, my wife has desire. Oh, she has feelings. Oh, she's not a
Mhm,
porn star,
mhm.
right? That's a big, sadly, but that's how we were groomed, right? That's how we were
Right.
socialized in the church and in just culture at
Yeah.
large.
Well said.
So I want to ask you, um, the title of your book. Here it
Yes.
is, this beautiful thing. This taps into a shared wound
Mhm,
by so many men, right? The sex
mhm,
talk that was either shallow, shame based, or just non existent.
mhm.
What do you believe should have been said to us as boys about our sexuality? What core truths do you wish every father, mother passed down to us?
Yes. Well, you know, yes, the title itself is trying to speak to what I see. as one of the, if not the most neglected area of a man's life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sexuality is probably the place he's had the least meaningful conversations
Yes.
in his life, the least nurturing. We don't talk enough about sexual formation.
That's
You
right.
know, spiritual formation, sure, but yeah, I guess we think it just runs itself,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't,
Yes.
right? And every person at some level has sexual struggle. Maybe not, you know, mechanical struggle, meaning like the plumbing works, but even
Mm.
there, I think it's like 85% of couples at some point will go through physical sexual dysfunction, let alone the emotional story, relationship around it, let alone your
Yes.
own personal journey. So, like, almost guaranteed that you're going to struggle somewhere in relationship to your sexuality.
Yes.
Um, that was certainly true of my life. Uh, but, you know, what do I wish men would hear? You know, probably front and center, what I would want men to know and what I would want, you know, fathers to convey to young men would be your sexuality is actually a really good part of you.
Yes.
It was blessed in Eden by God.
That's right.
And it has a place and a vision in culture that can be a form of blessing to the world,
Mm.
right? Let alone your own personal pleasure or your own personal life. But there's a way of living in relationship to your sexuality that can actually be a gift
Mm.
to the world. Um, and
Even, let me just interrupt. Even if I've historically used it for harm.
yes,
Mm.
yes. In other words,
Wow.
yes, you
Okay.
you can recover your innocence, right?
Mm.
Uh, as I say in the book, you know, a quote from our friend Dan Allender, who
Yes.
says, you know, innocence is the ability to be in awe.
Mm.
And so, if
Yes.
you can recover a sense of awe
Mm.
as the basis for your sexuality, which is both reverence and pleasure together, right?
Yes.
Not
Yes.
self-gratifying pleasure, but reverence, meaning it's built on respect and it's built on joy or pleasure or awe, right? That
Yes.
those things together uh, are a healthy and integrated sexuality to live from. So, um, you know, I wrote this book out of kind of the last kick in the butt was the Me Too movement,
Mm-hmm.
which was clearly a moment where, you know, stories of harm and just the wreckage of men's sexual desire going
Yes.
awry and bringing so much harm to the world. Um, I mean, just such a collective moment of grief and
Yes.
exposure. And the feeling I think we were all wrestling with is like, certainly I was just like, man, is male sexuality good?
Mm.
Can it have a good place? And obviously, being a Christian and knowing the story of original blessing in Eden, I knew there had to be a vision for its goodness. So,
Yes.
um, but you're right to say the opposite is very harmful. Meaning, when a man has lost that connection, um, you know, something does go awry in his life and in the world.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah.
Well said. Well said.
Hmm.
Let me do a
Well,
follow up because it's not fair.
yeah.
It's not fair that you got to follow up. So now I need to follow up.
Excellent.
How would you say these men that have not been initiated, have not had good sexual scaffolding placed for
Mm,
them, and now they find themselves grown, married, children, um, and their sexuality feels empty?
mm,
It feels like fragile. Like, what would you say to those men that
mhm,
feel like I'm uninitiated? I feel, even though I'm 40, I feel like I'm 12.
mm. Yeah. Uh, you know, in some ways, what you're beginning to name is there's such an attachment to voices of shame in your
Mhm.
life, meaning like there's such a probably a legacy of you believing the voice of shame about yourself, that there's
Yes.
something fundamentally broken or dirty, or man, you're just cursed to be a pervert,
Yes.
or you only just screw it up right? That there's something about your trust in that voice of shame, because shame comes to us sounding like it's the truth, right?
Yes.
It's very convincing. And so, to some degree, you've got to begin to see you've attached to a voice of shame, and you need to turn the tables on that.
Yes.
Um, just as a kind of moment of reckoning, to say, I am not going to believe that.
Yes.
I'm going to question that, right? Maybe you can't see
Yes.
something opposite, but that you start with saying, I'm going to start to question that voice.
Yes.
And then again, humans, you know, uh, and certainly things I've noted in your book as well. Humans crack along storylines.
Yes.
So, um, to begin to ask questions, this isn't just bad behavior, right?
Yes.
It's not that you've just behaved badly, but as you said, a pornographic style of relating, right? That there's intentionality, and even story that has
Yes.
animated your behavior.
Yes.
And so to begin to believe deeper things about yourself, that you're not just an animal
That's
who's
right.
behaved badly and needs a slap on the hand, but you actually need to do some soulish, heart level reflection, um, you know, starting with questioning the voice of shame.
Yes. Well
Yeah.
said. Well said.
Um, to that end, I want to ask you, that sentence, um, that is a 10,000 pound sentence, a pornographic style of relating. And I mean, we could talk all day on that. I love it as a conversation. Um, but you're naming there what was powerful to me. I want you to unpack that, but what I wanted to focus on is you're naming more than just a guy that struggles with lust,
Yes.
right? That a pornographic style of relating is far bigger than just struggling with lustful thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, where you came up with that sentence too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I realized it for my own life of as I was untangling, pornography and then trying to live in a healthy way, realizing of wait a minute, I learned a lot of ways of being. I learned, as I was starting to date Christy, this is I don't know, say 20, almost 20 years ago, realizing well, this is like a real woman. Like I better like I got
Mm,
some work to do if I'm going to want to be in relationship with her. And then I got exposed of because previously I had related so in an unhealthy way and then realized that my history of porn use then impacted how I dated,
mm,
right? Where, porn, I wanted control, right? I could always just click and get whatever I wanted, right? Well, a healthy relationship is one of freedom, not control, right?
mhm.
A
Right.
non-pornified, pornified's way of relating taught me about objectification,
Yeah.
right? The woman was less than, rather than honor, which is a healthy relationship, right? So porn
Mm,
taught me speed, right? It's about kind of quickly. Let's just
mhm,
get a quick climax, the intensity,
mhm,
right, of consummation. But a healthy relationship is the opposite.
mm.
It's a
Right.
gradual, it's a slow build, right? We don't
Yes.
fall in love, we grow in love, right?
Yeah.
It's not this Hollywood fantasy, whereas
Right.
porn is built on fantasy,
Yes.
right? And so, pornographic style of relating, porn taught me to hunger. There's a
Mm,
frantic need. I have to
mm,
fill this insecurity, this cavern
mhm,
inside of me. I have to fill it. And so I'm going to objectify to attempt to make myself feel big, to
mm,
feel whole, to feel like a man, to feel whatever. Um, and it's about consuming
mm,
rather than a healthy sexuality is about desire. It's a
mm,
healthy want, right? It's a healthy thing,
mhm.
genuine desire rather than that hunger, that devouring posture.
Yes.
Right. And another category, there's just a few more categories here of what I call the PSR. The PSR is it's about isolation, right?
Yeah.
Behind the closed doors, I learned to hide my sexuality, to go underground with my shame, Whereas healthy sexuality is about communion, right?
Mm,
It's actually about sharing vulnerability
mm-hmm,
with another person,
so good.
sharing my humanity, right?
Yeah.
I'm so struck by, for me to use porn, I'd have to cut off part of my humanity, right? What
Mm,
senses do we use? Sight, right? And then if you're watching a video, hearing. That's it. Two parts of our senses are
yeah.
used. What about taste? What about smell? Right? What about touch? Like
Yeah.
what if our healthy sexuality is through our five senses and we have bifurcated and cut off part of what it means to be human, why we're not having good sex,
Mhm,
or we're not having genuine communion, genuine intimacy and connection,
mm,
right? The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. We
mm,
all long for that connection. We all
mm,
long for intimacy. We just don't know how to do it or what to do,
mhm,
right? And the final category of a pornographic style of relating is, porn is built on fantasy, right? And so what I learned as a 12, 13-year-old boy beginning to be consumed with internet porn is I learned that all women want me, and
mm,
they all want my penis all the time, 24 hours a
mm.
day. So I'd walk into a coffee shop, and that barista, she wants my body. Of course she does, right? Like, you
Mm.
see how stupid,
Yeah.
and yet that's the fantasy that's being spoon fed
Yeah.
to me as a 12-year-old boy. So
Yeah.
how do I relate then? Well, of course I relate in a dominating, entitled way. Right? Of course, I begin to live out these aspects. Whereas the opposite of fantasy is authenticity, actually truth, an honor, um, vulnerability, mutual vulnerability back and forth. Like, this is what makes a good relationship.
Mm,
And so, this took me a while to undo in me, to unlearn and then relearn. Okay, what is a healthy relationship? How do I actually honor my partner as an equal rather than
mhm,
an object? So
mm,
that's the brief
mhm.
synopsis of that.
Yeah. Man, it's so powerful. Just that, for you to honor that pornography is not actually all that erotic. It's not all
Mm.
that sensual, right? You're naming like it actually is a very small portion of
Yes.
you, um, and leaves out huge swaths of you, as you're saying, like whole
Yes.
senses
Exactly.
and communion. I mean, oh, dude, there's poetry in that.
Hmm.
Intimacy and communion, and um, uh, I love that you said, um, I can't remember. It's going to be a paraphrase, but like romance is built on freedom.
Hmm.
I think you
Yes.
said, right? Like, and you talked about the need to be free, and the way to be a lover to Christy was freedom, for her to have
Yes.
freedom, and for you to learn how to relate to her in that free place versus
Yes.
control.
Rather than
Um,
control. Exactly.
that's so good.
Right. But
Yeah.
that's what happens, right? In pornography, right? The setup, the romance, the rituals, the climax, they're all in my power. Everything's
Yes.
all about me. It's
Yeah.
a fundamentally selfish act, whereas healthy sexuality is the exact opposite.
Right. Up to and including I can move on to the next video or the next
Right.
picture, if I'm not satisfied.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's powerful.
Jumping in. Tell me, how do you, Sam, how do you help men move beyond just behavior management,
Mm,
right? Into deeper healing of their loneliness, of their unmet longing, of their eroticized wounds?
mm.
How do you move beyond just, okay, I'm going to put some more blockers on my computer, I'm going to develop another accountability group? How do you take men deeper to heal from pornography use, loneliness, and false intimacy?
Yeah, I found, um, at least initially, it seems like men almost want to see their pornography use as just a slip up or bad behavior,
Hmm.
right? There's a pull to be like, yeah, it's bad, it's bad, and I'm gonna beat myself up for a while, and I'm, and um, I think the part that is often resisted is the invitation to curiosity, which I
Yes.
know is a word near and dear to you as well. Um, and to actually ask questions around, what was the context around your unwanted sexual behavior?
Hmm.
Meaning, what was going on the
Yes.
hour, the day? literally the geography that you were standing in when you felt the pull to or temptation.
Yes.
Um, but also then, things like, well, what did you look at?
Hmm.
Most men are not typing porn into a search bar.
That's right.
They're often typing in some sort of fantasy,
That's right.
or a fetish. And so being able to start to see that and really brave your fantasy
That's
life
right.
and your
That's right.
arousal structure or template,
Yes.
um, can actually be fairly unnerving. Like, isn't that what I'm trying to forget? And right, like, ugh,
Totally,
I
and
just
it's without when the judgment goes away is when the beauty can arise.
yes,
When the map becomes clear that this is the doorway into our healing.
yes, yes,
So true.
yes. Um, so that move, and when I see men starting to get that, like, start to be curious,
Yes.
um, that's the good stuff. That feels like,
Yes.
okay, you're starting to be more brave with the rest of you,
Exactly.
and not just be the animal anymore.
Yes, exactly. Which dovetails to my next question, which I'm sneaking in another one. You didn't even know it. But you in your book, you talk about, which I'm gonna just keep holding it up. You talk about how telling one's sexual story is so central to healing. How do men do that? How do they confront that initial fear or those voices of shame that seem so loud
Mhm,
in them? How do they, and how do they begin to tell their story
mm.
of sexual shame, sexuality?
Yeah, I imagine some of this is familiar to you as well, but often they'll say something like, if we get past just thinking about behaving and not behaving as sexuality, as the sexual grid, but they'll say things like, well, man, there's some weird stuff that happened
Yes.
when I was a kid. And,
It's a
weird
code word.
often being yeah. Or even things like, I plan to take this to my grave.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I don't know why I'm telling you right now.
Yes.
And I may regret it, and they'll share. And I would say, beginning, if you just believe your shame, you won't do it.
That's right.
And again, I would want to say there is a kind of self-absorption to shame. It is, you know, uh, it is a form of, it will tempt you to hide, right?
Yeah.
And so not being curious is a form of hiding. So just being able to ask questions around stories that you think are slam dunk, you're convinced. They seem black and white.
Yes.
It's me. I'm the pervert in the story, or
Yes.
this is so clearly just me being a terrible, horrible, lustful sinner,
Mm.
right? I'm dirty. Um, so beginning to say, will you be open to considering maybe that's not true? Maybe there's more powers at play in the story. Um,
Yes.
just that, again, it is brave work, as you named um, so well. But that step into the weird things, or the things you feel like are going to damn you
Yes.
uh eternally. So I'm going to dovetail off that. I'm going to hold up your book again, because I know you talk as well. I was very moved by how you described, you have a chapter where you kind of like look at men and kind of lock the whole book at points, right? You're obviously addressing men, uh, and what I loved as well is how often, most of the time, you brought in the voices of women, to speak, in quotes. But there's a place where you kind of lock eyes with the men to invite them to their work. Um, and I was noticing, this isn't like the the chapter isn't about like ball busting. Like, let me
Right.
just like, this is about, beating up men and really taking them to task.
Right.
Um, you actually have a different invitation, which is a very kind one,
Mm.
right? Which is, you already alluded to earlier, like the first step is actually to step into your own work,
Yes.
to begin to look at your own stories.
That's right.
And out of that, then to begin to look at, um, or that will then change their churches, homes.
Exactly.
And I wanted to, if I can, there's a quote. Um, you quoted Rachel Peters. If I can read hers,
Please.
because I
Yes.
thought her words were great. I don't think a church can be safe for women until men do the hard work of self reflection into their own lives and they recognize their faulty beliefs about women and come face to face with their own demons.
That's right.
Um, and she goes on, but not ball busting. This isn't about beating yourself up.
No, not at all. The exact opposite, right? It's the kindness of God that leads to repentance.
Mm,
And yet, whether you're a church leader, just a man that cares about the church, right? It's like you can't lead others where you have not gone yourself. And
mm,
so, will you do this work? Will you look at the categories of your own sexuality? Will you look at your own socialization? Will you look at what was taught to you about the feminine? How was
mm,
that? What were you guided to? What was your father's view of that? And how does that influence how you engage your own wife? Right? Like, will you start doing that work? Because it's huge, right? Whether porn is in your life or not, or has been in your life or not, you've grown up in a society that patriarchy's real, misogyny's real, right? Like the objectification of women is real. And
mm,
this has impacted how we relate to the feminine. And so at the end of the day, will you do the hard work, the beautiful work of crucifixion, of self reflection, so that you can become new,
mm.
so that
Yeah.
you can lead with deeper integrity and with more full courage?
So, a question there. Um, I'm gonna get a double question in. You talk um well, and again, you quote I think her name was Kara, where she addresses she describes how men you're describing the ability to receive feminine power. And she was describing how she noticed there are men that felt threatened
Yes.
by her empowerment and
Yes.
her gifts, her skills, her talents. Um, what do you think it takes for a man to be able to receive the power, the true beauty, as you named, right?
Hmm.
Not objectifying, but being able to receive and honor the beauty of a woman, but
Yes.
also just her capacity, her intelligence, um,
Yes. So,
her
so
ability to challenge.
yeah. So insecure men are always going to feel threatened by a powerful woman, no matter what. If you are an insecure man with unhealed wounds inside of you, if you are still living out of the wounded child or the adaptive adolescent, right? Parts work, right? That part of you is unhealed and you have not healed those parts of you, then anything that smells of a powerful woman is going to haunt you.
Mm,
You are going to run from that because you know if you're in relationship with her, you will be exposed.
mm,
She will
mhm,
call you to more,
mm,
and you don't know who you are.
mhm,
And so I'm going to avoid you. And not only that, I'm going to gaslight you. I'm
mm.
going to make it feel like it's your problem,
Yeah,
that you want too much, that you desire too much, that your intuition, your body is fundamentally flawed. And
yeah,
if I can do that, then I can escape
yeah.
into my own fantasy. I can escape without facing my own pain. And I get off scot free, right? Like I can do what I want and I can regain power and control, retain it.
So talk about that exposure.
Hmm.
What do men fear will be exposed? What do you hear from men?
Men hate feeling futile. Okay.
Mm,
I want to feel like I am competent and that I have mastery.
mm,
And so, any way that I don't feel that mastery, that I feel young, it's like a caged lion. I
yeah,
will slash your face off if you get close to me.
yeah.
And I see that all the time in my work with this type of men, that if you do that, like I will make you pay
Mm,
if you expose me, because I have spent my whole life protecting this part of me.
Hmm.
And we got to bless that part, right? We got
Hmm.
to own that, because that part helped get you out alive.
Hmm.
But that does not serve you well.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that the unprocessed trauma is always reenacted in our present day relationships. And it'll be reenacted again and again and again
Hmm.
until we actually begin to do work around this part of us
Mm.
that has caused us to psychologically split and to stay and remain young. So
Mm.
that's the internal work
Yeah.
that I'm calling all of us to do, but
Yeah.
especially men, because we have to take ownership that in positions of power, we can hurt so
Yeah.
many people. And it's happening all the time. Just read the news.
Hmm. It's such a good invitation that, like, inviting men. I keep picturing that word freedom you talked about with
Mhm.
Christy, like learning how to receive her with freedom,
Yes.
and like being able to let parts of you maybe that you needed to help survive at a certain point in your life,
Mhm.
like help them grow up and become
Right.
her mate, her match. Like,
Exactly. Right.
yeah,
Totally. I have to realize that her success is actually part of my success. Like I am cheering her on. She is cheering me on versus this threat. I'm not saying we've
yeah,
always done this, right? We've been jealous of each other or whatever, but it's like, no, like we have to continue to look like we are a team,
yeah, that's
right?
good.
We are a team. And
Yeah,
she's better at a lot of things than me, and I have to follow her, and I'm better at a lot of things than her, and she has to follow me. And like that's how we are successful in our marriage.
yeah, that's
Um,
so good.
Rather than, oh, I have a penis, so therefore I am de facto leader.
Right. And better than you at
And
everything. And yeah, right,
right,
right. Yeah,
that's not how it works.
yeah,
So tell me this,
yeah.
as we were talking about this beautiful book, talk about the
That's
link
good.
between wounding and desire.
Mm,
Um, that desire and woundedness are often profoundly linked. Can you share how understanding a man's wound can clarify and dignify his sexual desire?
mm. Yeah. You know, I think, we're wounded, the depth of our pain. And it's true for anyone, not just men in regards to their sexuality, right? But the depth of our pain always matches the depth of our desire.
Yes, well said.
Meaning, you have trauma, and it may not be clear at first. What did I want? Right? What was my desire in that story? But you are traumatized to the degree you have desire in
Yes.
relationship to a story. So, you know, helping men recognize, um, as I say in the book, sexual desire is not just a desire for release. You're actually wired, and crave touch.
Yes.
You crave attachment. You crave a relationship. You crave play. You crave to be. You actually want to be undone,
Yes.
right? You want to actually be the man that's capable of being overcome with the power of another person, your wife, her physical beauty in the act of sex, but also just, as you said, her intelligence, her gifting, her success, in relationship, in romance. You're made, as what I say, that's all your lover heart. And a lover is capable of all those things and wants those things. And I think what, has surprised me, I don't know why, but, men will come into my office and say sometimes, like, I feel like I'm the woman in the relationship
Mm,
because I actually want the emotional stuff. Right. And it's like, what's wrong with our masculinity that,
yes.
a man has to say that? Um, or, you know, I think of Sue Johnson has a quote, where she talks about, a sentence of compassion for men. She says, I would want sex all the time too if it was the only place
Mm.
I could get touch other than the football field,
Phew.
right? And she's
Yes.
she's obviously talking about masculine struggles, and she says, interestingly, little boys are held less than little
Yes.
girls
Mm,
on the whole.
yes.
Um, so again, beginning to connect, like, you don't just want sex.
Right.
You actually want attachment, play, and awe.
Exactly.
But probably you have stories that have separated you from
Yes.
embodiment,
Yes.
from attachment. You have attachment wounds.
Yes.
And then you probably have some accusation, whether it was overt sexual abuse or just accusation that led you to feel something's wrong with your sexual curiosity.
Yes.
Um, or something's wrong with your playfulness and romance. Uh, that so beginning to address, your desire is buried in your trauma. Your
Yes.
desire is buried. It's often where we end up cutting ourselves off from it. Like, I'm not doing that again,
Yes.
right? Because that ended in a lot of pain. And so then we resort to, I guess I'll just get off, right? And if a guy has gotten there, I know, he's got a wake of wounds, certainly self-protection as well, but a wake of wounds that have separated him from the rest of his heart.
Yes. Well said. Yes. It reminds me when you said that, it reminds me of our men's workshop. I just got finished yesterday, and we, spend so much of the time being 6 inches eye to eye with, you know, doing intimacy exercises with these men. And by,
Mm.
Thursday, they can barely do it for a minute. And yesterday, near the end of it, we did it 15 straight minutes. Um, Basically, they long for connection. And when do men
Yeah.
face each other? 6 inches from each other's face. When's the
Right.
only time in our society?
Right.
It's when they're about to fight. Right?
Yeah.
It's UFC or boxing when they face each other. We've
Yeah.
been socialized to stand shoulder to shoulder, to play basketball, to do,
Mhm.
build something, to do something, but to actually turn towards each other.
Mm.
We've been told from the beginning of time, well, that's not what men do,
Right.
and yet we are longing for that
Yeah. Oh,
so
that's so
deeply.
good. Yeah. That's so good. Um, we'll we'll do a couple more questions and then
Let's jump into the comment. Jump
comments
into
if
the
there's any.
comments.
Feel
Sure.
free to drop your comments there. Um, I let me see where I'm at here. Um, I okay. So we talked about becoming you. I was struck by, you have a chapter on like present day, like I can't remember what it's called, but it's about the kind of the ongoing present day struggle of women within the church.
Hmm.
And it wasn't, you talked about a lot of things in that chapter, but the one that struck me is um and maybe this goes without saying, but it feels like it needs to be said. This is not like a hatred of men, right? There's actually a big deep craving, you described from the women's voices in the chapter, longing for an ally
Yes.
in men. um it was so moving to me to hear their ache for
Yes.
men to become allies of women. And I was curious if you could describe what you see as, like, how does a man become an ally
Yeah.
to women?
Well, doing that internal work, right, first that we just talked about, is going to be a huge factor in that. So when we can do that, then we can change our view of women. We can see them as an image bearer of God. It's oil and water. You can't have objectification, right, and honoring the Imago Dei. They
Mhm.
don't mix. You cannot do that. So if well, I haven't looked at porn in forever, but every now and then I'll still sneak pics on Instagram of women in bikinis, but it's not porn, right? It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's porn with clothes on. You are objectifying women. And if that's still in you, then you cannot honor the Imago Dei, in the face of God in that woman. Right. And so
Mhm.
we become allies by taking ownership, by knowing our story, and by telling the truth of our story and our darkness. But when we do that, we hold, like, hand in hand. When we tell the truth of our darkness, we also have to tell the truth of our glory and our goodness.
Mhm.
Right. So I'm never too prideful, because I know my depravity. And I'm also never too self contemptuous because I also know my glory and my goodness.
Mm,
And in that, we can hold the tension of the death and resurrection. And I think live an authentic Christian experience, which is what
that's so
we
good.
crave.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. I love that. And in other words, that again, the fruit of being kind to your own story means that something in your heart will change to a
Mhm.
greater capacity to receive the power of women and be kind to them.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Let me ask you this last question and then we'll
Okay.
jump into our comments. A lot of my followers, a lot of my platform is women who have been abused by narcissistic abuse, have been spiritually abused, sexually abused. Many of them are single moms trying their best to play the role of dad and mom, and they don't trust their partners to give good sexual foundation. They
Yeah.
actually expect them to give them toxic advice.
Hmm.
You know, a mixture of what we grew up with as far as, purity culture and also, toxic objectification. What do you tell the women on this platform that are listening to this? What can they do as mothers, single moms who want to raise healthy sexual young men?
Mm. I am convinced you don't have to create a category for your boys, which is, oh, you're a lover. You don't have to teach them to be like, you don't have to create this hybrid man, right? Like sometimes I think
Yeah.
it's the convincing is, well, see, that's all guys want, right?
Mm.
That kind of over sexualized view of men. Just give them food and sex and they're fine,
Hmm.
right? Which,
Caveman.
yeah, right. And or worse, right? Like, this is your right. You're entitled to this.
Hmm.
And I think what I've known, and just even raising my own three boys, I'm a father of three boys who are coming of age. One's 13, 11, and 8. And I'm just amazed that if given the space, healthy space, they're asking all the questions of a lover.
Hmm.
Like, Dad, how do you know um, when you want to get married? Like, how
Mm.
do you know which girl to get married to? Or we're talking about relationship stuff, and certainly, yes, they have curiosity about sexuality, but I've been struck by how it's all there if it doesn't get separated.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and so just giving space, I think, to your sons to talk about their lover hearts,
Yeah.
beauty,
Hmm.
um, what they um, like qualities they think would make a good um, marriage. Just getting their curiosity thinking, what qualities they like in the women that they think they're attracted to, right? Think
Hmm.
are cute, or like, what do you see in her that you love? Like, just helping them be able to have space for that. And because obviously what you're naming is either there isn't a father or he's not a good man.
Yeah.
He's not going to be asking that, right? He'll be,
Right.
terrible stories that I'm sure we've both heard of, like men that groom their sons
Oh yes.
to objectify. But if you give space for it, the second thing I would say is, certainly age appropriate, but sharing your story of good men and bad men,
Mm.
or good moments with men and bad moments, right?
Yes.
Not to say there are separate categories of good and bad men, but like, what made you feel honored by men?
Mm.
When did you feel harmed? Like, inviting them in age appropriate ways to your own story. I share a story in my book, about my mother,
Mm.
and I didn't hear the story until I was 35. It's a horrible story of my mother's own harm, sexual harm, um, which she gave permission for me to share in the book. But I remember at 35 just weeping
Mm.
for, like, wow,
Yeah.
you know, it just it helped me, immensely. feel the power and honestly, an impetus to keep doing my work of
Yes.
like, I don't want to be the monster man
Yes.
my mother met.
Yeah.
I want to be the good man. And there were several good
Yes.
men in her story who helped rescue her. But um, yeah, it's in there. It just needs space
Yes.
to be to have conversation.
That's right. Well said. Well said. Well, let's jump over
Yes,
to our comment section here. Got quite a few of them. I don't. Can you see them all? I can't
I
quite
can't right
see it.
now. Let
I
me.
can't quite see them all.
Why is it not showing up? Technology. Let me jump to a different screen here. I have an iPad.
Okay,
If
perfect.
you see any,
Yeah, let's see if I can open. It looks like I got 16 comments, and I can only see a few of them right now. Um, one, we'll just jump into this one here.
yeah.
Evan says, "What's the best way to untwist the toxic view of women into a healthy perspective?"
Mm,
I think we covered some of that, didn't we?
yeah.
Yeah, I think we covered some of that.
Maybe
Uh,
what one thing I would add is just, developing relationships, friendships with women.
yes.
Learning just healthy, even like platonic connection to women. Like just, it's a place that you begin to feel there's no threat here. There can actually be like a strong invitation to growth. So that would be one place.
Yes. I'm trying to find that I can see more of these comments. Can you find them yet?
I can't. Dude,
We got two
it only gives me the live screen and it says no comments. Let me pull it up.
two old men trying to navigate technology
That's right.
here. Um,
Okay,
all
I'm
right,
going here.
I'm working on it. Don't you worry.
We're coming for you.
That's right.
See if this gets me.
Now I can't find any. Okay, here we go. 18 comments now, so they keep coming. This one's for Andrew. Hey, that's me. Haven't read the book yet. Do you believe there's a way for a church to hold a complementarian position without being abusive? Woo.
mm,
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, and I don't know. I can take a stab at it. I'd love to see it, but a lot of what I've seen in that camp is a benevolent form of sexism.
mm,
Um, it's a sexism that seemingly expresses positive attitudes towards women, right? Mostly, but then it reinforces traditional gender roles and traditional stereotypes, and unfortunately limits women's opportunity, and perpetuates inequality. Um, and I don't think that's good. Is that abusive? Yes, no. Um, Another question I see here is, how do you address, Andrew, some of the scripture that talks about that?
yeah.
And I did wrote a whole chapter on that. Some of the scriptures that are, you read them and you're like, oh wow, that sounds that sounds awful, right? As far as women in subservient roles, and so a couple of the main clobber texts. First Timothy, 2:11 through 12. A woman should learn quietly, full submission. Do not allow a woman to teach or have authority over a man. Or even First Corinthians 14:34. Women should be silent in churches. They're not permitted to speak. They submit to themselves to the law. Um, so you have those verses, and when you read them, just you're like, wow, okay, that seems clear, and yet they're not clear at all. The interpretation has been deeply impacted by a Roman and Greek, um, patriarchal culture that really influenced so much of this interpretation, right? So when you look at the word Hashua, which is interpreted quiet, it doesn't mean quiet. It means stillness. A woman should be still. Well, that's completely different than a woman should be quiet, right? A woman should learn in stillness. I can get behind that. Or when you look at the word authoritarian, means authority. It's a loose Greek translation. Well, what does it actually mean? The origin relates to abusing one's power. So when it says, right, a woman should not have authority, it actually means a woman should not abuse her authority over a man. Well, that means it implies a woman has authority over a man, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's just we have misinterpreted these texts again and again, and they've been mixed with this toxicity. Where you look at Paul's writings, he talks about women as co-laborers. Priscilla was outstanding among the apostles, right? Anna given a prominent role, named as a prophet in Luke 2:36, right? Philip had four daughters who prophesied in Acts 21:9. Phoebe was a deacon, Romans 16:1. And Juno was described as outstanding among the apostles in Romans 16:7. Not only that, if you don't, we have to be consistent in our interpretation. If you interpret 1 Timothy 2:8 through 15 as silencing all women for all time, then you've got some problems, because then it contradicts a myriad of other scriptures. Luke 24:9, John 4:39, Judges 5:7, Exodus 15:20, Esther 7:3. Like, you're gonna have to do all sorts of gymnastics with your theological interpretation. And sadly, that's what we've been doing. To me, it reeks of some similarities of even, slavery, where they, in 1807, they created the slave Bible, where they took slaves obey your earthly masters, and they created an entire theology around that, an entire Bible around that, and they removed the book of Exodus. Why? Because they didn't want black people to be inspired to break free from oppressive systems. That's, to me, I mean, just despicable. You can use scripture to justify evil. Whereas if you actually look at Galatians 3:28, there's no Jew or Greek, no slave or free, no male or female. We are one in Christ. So that's a long answer to your question. Um, if you see it, if you can find it, complementarianism as not abusive, that's awesome. I don't know about it. Um, and it can be very subtle and hard to see, but I truly believe that we are all one in Christ, and there's no hierarchy in Christ
Mhm.
Jesus.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and it seems like that Genesis 3, what some have, believed to be the kind of like correction of women, right? Your desire will be for your husband and he will rule over you. It seems like any time that gets referenced or even hinted at, it feels like it's always to describe the brokenness of it, right? Like I think of Esther 1 seems to be such a picture of the brokenness of a hierarchy, right?
Yes.
Which is where King Xerxes is dismissing his queen because she won't. Interestingly, he wants to sexually objectify her,
Yes.
and ends up sending her away because of fear that the women will rise up and say no, like she did.
Mm, yes.
Right. In other words, it doesn't feel like there's a picture presented that says this is good in
Right.
any way for there to be a hierarchy.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
after the fall, right? I mean, it's after
Right.
the fall. It's like, yes, it's
Right.
not the way we're meant to be.
Right. Yes. There were a
Did you ever
couple.
did you ever
Okay.
find did you ever find any of the
I
questions?
did.
All
I
right.
got it to work, man. Let's see. There was. Let me come back to that screen. Um, just how there was a question around. Is there a way to convince, let's say, a husband who doesn't really um, understand the injustice that women feel in a
Mhm.
church, let's say, that limits women's positions and stuff, etc. Is what I mean. Is there a way to convince him, or what would you say to him to help him begin to
Yeah.
understand this?
I mean, I wish there.
Yeah.
Sadly, all you can do is have your own boundaries. All you can do is speak from your own heart. but there's so many women that wish they could just help men respect women, and it is such a hard journey. Do not beat your head against the, like, it is their job and their job alone, the husband's job. And we can hope and pray that he takes his journey, and you can have your own boundaries within your own body and within your own desire, your own ask. But as far as making him do the work, um, it's impossible. Sadly, most of the men that come through our workshops and our retreats, it's normally at the end. It's normally when they've been caught cheating in an affair, they're losing their family, and then men wake up and be like, oh gosh, I better take this seriously. I didn't know she actually was done. It's normally when the boundaries have been set and clear lines that they begin to see their entitled and destructive behavior that has wreaked havoc on the people that they say they love.
Mhm. Well, I'm sifting here. Um, I think I'm guessing we've missed a few in here, but somebody was just asking, are these books available in the UK? Yes. Maybe we'll end with that. I personally just want to plug Andrew's book. It is, again, like I said, such a drumbeat of invitation to you as men. Obviously, I think as women, I hope you'll feel the validation of your voice here, as Andrew
Yes.
brought women's voices in so well. But yes, I think it's available wherever books are sold.
Yes.
I would guess. And
Yes, definitely.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you all for joining us. This was rich with you, Andrew.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having this idea. I'm glad we could do this, and hopefully we can commune again at a later
Yes,
date.
that'd be great. Well, this video should be up for you all. Thank you for joining us, and bless you and your journey.
Peace.
Peace. Okay, so I think it's ended on. Let me make sure.
That'd be funny.
Are we still here? Is this thing on?
That's right. I can just give you a call.
All right.
All right, man. Bye.